Hey guys, it's Miss Arlequin, and in this lesson we are going to talk about body paragraphs and how we can craft body paragraphs that support the thesis of our essay. Alright, so previously we've spoken in general about the structure of an essay and how I like to compare the structure of an essay to an hourglass. And I talked about the introduction and how the introduction starts out really broad or general and then gets more specific as you go on. And how the body paragraphs are the middle of the hourglass. It's the narrowest part, it's the most specific. And then the conclusion is like the introduction in reverse, where you start out specific and start to get more general. So today we're going to focus on the middle of our essay, our body paragraphs. So when you have your body paragraphs, what you're doing is you are taking the thesis statement from your introduction. And we know that our thesis statement is the sentence that states our claim or the argument that we're going to be making in our essay. And what you do in your body paragraphs is you basically prove your thesis statement. And so each paragraph should be a complete paragraph, and each paragraph should relate back to your thesis statement. A good general way to organize your body paragraphs is to make sure that each paragraph has a topic sentence. It has body or detail sentences that have your supporting details, your text evidence, your explanation of why your thesis is correct. And as a little extra bonus, you might wrap up your body paragraphs with a concluding sentence that kind of ties everything you discussed in the body, kind of ties it together. Now, effective body paragraphs are going to have a couple of elements. They're going to help prove the thesis. They're going to stay on one topic. And so a body paragraph that talks about too many things is not a very effective paragraph. It should have a clear topic sentence. So just like the thesis tells your reader what the essay is going to be about, there should be a topic sentence that tells your reader what that paragraph is going to be talking about. It gives your paragraph a focus. And it should have examples from the text that prove your thesis. And again, we've talked in class about how there are two types of evidence. You can have just summary details or paraphrase of text evidence in your own words. And you also have quotes, direct sentences that you have chosen from the text that best prove your argument or prove your claim. The most effective body paragraphs are not going to have one type of text evidence over another. They're actually going to have a combination of these two types of text evidence. Effective body paragraphs also are going to have elaboration sentences that really show deep thought and analysis of the text evidence examples. And they're going to explain how the examples prove their point and make real-world connections to help explain the examples. And so what I mean by that is, let's say we were writing an essay about the chaser. We might explain our text evidence and make a real-world connection by saying something like Alan and Diana, sometimes couples will. And I could finish that sentence with something I know from real life that I can apply to my analysis of the story. Like Alan and Diana, sometimes couples will become obsessed with each other and only want to be with that one person no matter what. Or I could say, if Alan hadn't tried to force Diana into falling in love with him then. And so here what I'm doing is, instead of using real-world connections, what I'm doing is I'm analyzing what Alan did do by making a connection to what didn't happen in the story. So remember, we've talked about this in class as well. Sometimes talking about opposites, or talking about what else could have possibly happened in a text and how that would change the meaning of the text or change the central idea, is a good way to elaborate and explain what actually did happen. Now, each paragraph, I've stated before, should refer back to the thesis. Well, what does that mean exactly? It basically means that you're giving specific details on each of the subpoints that you need to discuss in your essay in order to prove your thesis. So an example would be an essay whose thesis was going to be country living is the best. It would be the job of this essay to prove that that is a true statement, to prove that living in the country is better than living in any other part of the world. Some subpoints that you might want to make in this essay to prove that country living is the best is you might want to describe the benefits of country living. And so some specific details might be that it's quieter, it's less stressful, and then there are friendly neighbors. Now, what if you need some help organizing your paragraphs? You're not exactly sure which subpoints you want to discuss or which paragraph you want to put each subpoint into. Hopefully a lot of this decision making has been made during the planning process when you've made an outline or a flea map or a flow map for your writing. But in general, a good way to think about each paragraph is in the form of a question. So you want to think, how will this paragraph prove my thesis, and what subtopic will I discuss here? If you have a paragraph that is not proving your thesis, then it is a paragraph that does not belong in your essay. It would be a sweet tart paragraph, kind of like sweet tart evidence, completely irrelevant and not necessary for the writing. Now, one of the best things to do when you're trying to start writing your paragraphs is to take your thesis and try to turn your thesis into some smaller guiding questions. These guiding questions could actually become your topic sentence, your kind of guide for what you're going to write in the paragraph. All right, so let me actually show you what that looks like. Sometimes it's easier to see what it looks like than to just hear somebody explaining it. So I'm going to use the thesis. John Collier's short story, The Chaser, illustrates that trying to fake true love will only lead to regret. Okay, so my essay is going to prove with text evidence that this is a theme of the story. I can turn this into a question by saying, how does the chaser prove that faking true love will lead to regret? Now that I've got my guiding question, the next step is to answer this question in my paragraph. And so how am I going to answer that question? I'm going to start my paragraph with a topic sentence where I restate this question and answer it. So I'm explaining the point that I'm going to be making in the paragraph. I then give my text evidence, my examples from the story that prove the point I'm trying to make. In this case, I'm trying to prove that a character in the story tried to fake true love, and I also want to prove that it led to regret. When I give my text evidence, I want to elaborate on the text evidence and explain how my text evidence proves my point. Again, in this case, how does the text evidence that I'm including prove that the character has faked true love or that he's regretting his decision? And then I want to have my concluding sentence where I tie it up. Another way to think about your body paragraphs is to think about RAFT paragraphs, because basically your body paragraphs are RAFT paragraphs. So if we think about the breakdown of the body paragraph that I gave in the previous slide, I talked about topic sentences, examples, and then explaining and elaborating. So that matches up to a RAFT paragraph. The R and the A is your topic sentence. The F is your examples, and then the T, the this shows, is where you explain, elaborate, and extend upon your evidence. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to follow a couple of steps when writing our body paragraphs. And we're going to look at a model body paragraph and see how the student actually followed these steps. So step 1 is restating and answering. It's writing your topic sentence. Step 2 is giving your first piece of text evidence, your first example that proves your topic sentence. Step 3 is elaborating on your example, giving your reader some more details about it. Step 4 is explaining how the example proves your point. Step 5 is repeating the previous 3 steps, steps 2, 3, and 4, by giving a second piece of text evidence. And then step 6 is tying it up with a concluding sentence where you restate your topic sentence in slightly different words. All right, so this sample body paragraph comes from an essay where the student's thesis was John Collier's short story, The Chaser, illustrates that trying to fake true love will only lead to regret. As we look at this body paragraph, where do we see the different parts of an effective body paragraph. Where do we see step 1 being applied? Where do we see step 2? Where do we see step 3? And so on. The Chaser is about a man so in love with a girl that he's willing to do anything to be with her, even if he may end up regretting it. For example, Alan goes to visit an old man who sells different types of potions, including love potions. Using a love potion to try to win the girl of your dreams is a very extreme measure. Why? Well, for one thing, a love potion does not produce real love. The potion forces the person to be in love with you, instead of allowing them to fall for you naturally, to love you for who you are. The old man describes the effects of the love potion to Alan, but he is so driven by his desire for Diana that he doesn't recognize the warning signs. These warning signs clearly foreshadow that Diana will become obsessed with Alan. Alan, in turn, will become annoyed by Diana's extreme love. If Alan had just tried to win Diana over in a real natural way, then he wouldn't have ended up with a cheap imitation of love, one which will, undoubtedly, drive him to regret his actions and turn to extreme measures to correct them. When the old man says au revoir to Alan at the end of the story, the implication is that he will see him later, when Alan returns to buy the glove cleaner. As you can see, Alan will live to regret his hasty actions. Okay, so as you can see on this slide, we have the same sample body paragraph, and what I've done is I've numbered chunks of sentences. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to see if we can identify which sentences are actually either our topic sentence, our evidence sentence, our deep thought sentences, meaning sentences which are either elaborating or explaining or extending on the evidence, and which sentences are kind of wrapping everything up and concluding the paragraph. Okay, so as we get ready to write our body paragraphs, one final thing we want to keep in mind is that when we're writing, we want to always make sure we use transition words to connect ideas. And so on the screen, you'll see some examples of transition words that would be excellent choices for essay writing. We have them broken down by category, so you have some transition words to show a continuation of a thought, that you're adding more information. We have transition words to give examples or text evidence. We have transition words to show contrast, which are very appropriate when you are comparing and contrasting two different texts or two different ideas. And then we have concluding transition words, which would be good at the end of a body paragraph or in the concluding paragraph of our entire essay. Keep in mind that there are resources in Google Drive in the student resource folder to aid us in all writing assignments. And so there are a lot of transition word lists that you can find there. You should refer to them whenever you're doing any writing assignment for not only ELA class, but any class that involves writing. All right, so now for your work time, I want you to use your planning maps, especially your flea map, to write your body paragraphs. If you get stuck, you can refer to some sentence frames that I've shared with you in the Codex Unit 2 folder, but those really should only be if you absolutely cannot do it on your own. It's always in your best interest to challenge yourself and try to do the writing by yourself.